Hey Mavs fans, if you're listening to this, you obviously like podcasts, and you probably like music too. On Spotify, you can listen to all of that in one place for free, and you don't need a premium account. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one that you're listening to now. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. You can download episodes to listen offline wherever you are, and you can easily share what you're listening to with your friends via Spotify's integrations with social media platforms like Instagram. Just search for The Step Back, a Mavs podcast on the Spotify app, or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab, and follow us so you never miss an episode of The Step Back, a Mavs podcast. Spotify is the world's leading music streaming service, and now it can be your go-to for podcasts too.
Hey, this is Skin Wade, and you're listening to The Step Back, a Badass Name podcast.
I like this, TK. I like that. Yeah, it's the Mavericks, all about action. Don't do no acting, no Samuel Jackson. Don't get the ball, you know that it's magic. Post move deadly, yeah, get tragic. Look with the ball, yeah, get nasty. He'll drop 30, don't gotta ask him. Got Chris Stapps, coach at the Adam. I spaz like Dallas, I thought I'm rapping. God, if Luka shoot the ball, you know that it's cash. But my boy still living the past. Now he got my boy Chris Stapps, looking like Duncan Nash in the gap. They just want a ring, wanna fill the gap on your team head. I ain't talking hats, dang, go relax. Still at the champ, defense still coming with the cannabis flow.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Step Back, a Mavs podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. I'm joined as always by my co-host and DallasBasketball.com colleague, Matt Galatzan. And we're joined by our very own Mike Fisher tonight. And he's with us to give us a Mavs free agency preview. We're going to talk about all the, the rumors and what's going on with the Mavs right now as free agency gets closer. It'll be here Sunday night. Starts at 5:01 p.m. Fish, how you doing?
Yeah, good. As we sit here on Thursday night, Friday morning, if you're listening to this, if you believe Woj, who is about the best in the business, this actually isn't a Mavericks preview; it's a Mavericks review because it's already done.
Yeah. Matt, how you doing?
Man, that tweet was a shot to the gut earlier, but I'm gonna get back up off the mat and keep going, see what happens.
Yeah. Don't get too depressed. I mean, we haven't even gotten there yet. Fish, I mean, we're gonna jump right into it here, and I talked to you earlier about this, but we've known for a while now that Kemba Walker planned on taking meetings, and despite all the noise from Woj that he's making it sound like it's a done deal with Kemba Walker and the Celtics. I mean, we haven't seen and we haven't heard anything that suggests that Kemba still isn't going to take meetings. So is there a sliver of hope there, or am I just being naive?
All right, as we speak, I just got done speaking to somebody who's close to the situation, who says that he does not know if Kemba Walker is going to take meetings.
I gotcha.
And so, obviously the Kemba said he was going to. I'm not sure why he would change. What did Boston do today that changed his mind from yesterday?
Right.
Because they can't have done anything with money, of course. They can't do much roster-wise, I don't think. So it's not like they can promise him, hey, we're going to get you and this and this. I don't think. And so I'm not saying Woj is wrong. He's great at what he does. But it does seem like there's still a bunch of balls being juggled, including the question you asked, which the people involved don't yet have an answer to. Frankly, I wish the Mavericks would text me right now and say, "Oh yeah, we still got a meeting with him." And if I get that text, obviously I'll tweet that and I'll announce that. We'll write the heck out of that, and that will change or at least stem the tide a little bit. But if Woj is wrong, he certainly climbed way out there on a limb, didn't he?
Right. Yeah. That.
It was one thing, boys, for him to kind of tweet, or it's one thing to say, moved into the league. Because as you guys have joked all day on Twitter, you can always say, "Oh, the horse pulled into the lead," but then he came up late.
Yeah, emerged as a front runner.
So front runners was Woj's first indication, but then he basically wrote it's done. And wrote a big story and all that. So the idea that Woj is being hoodwinked, I suppose it's possible. The idea that Woj is knowingly being used and then wrote that story, that's unthinkable. And therefore, Kemba to Boston suddenly is the front runner, to use the terminology.
Yeah, Matt. You kind of, we touched on it at the beginning. I know you've been kind of down in the dumps since that happened. But how are you feeling? Can you find any hope out of this situation for the Mavs?
No, not really. I agree with Fish. At first I was really skeptical because I couldn't figure out what had changed so much in the last 24 hours that, everybody was thinking Dallas, including Rick Bonnell of the Charlotte Observer was saying, if Kemba leaves for anywhere, it's going to be Dallas. And you tend to trust local reporters in situations like that. And then later, by the time Woj had written the story, it just, it's all kind of sunk in. And it's not the end of the world. When you have something like that in your sights and you get really confident about it, and then, the Woj report, drops a bomb on your face, then you take a hit and then you get back up and you go, okay, who's the next guy? So, I'll wake up tomorrow morning and feel better about it.
Well, and
let me say this too about the optimism. There are and we've in some quarters there's been people on Twitter or whatever that say, DallasBasketball.com, you've thrown out so many ideas. You're just throwing stuff against the wall. Well, I disagree that we're throwing stuff against the wall because it's the work of David Lord and you guys. It's so informed, as you guys know, and you can speak from the inside now. A great number of these quote ideas we're running by the Mavericks.
Yep.
I think we could gently reveal that, right?
Yes,
I think so. And the Mavericks are saying yes, that you can write that. No, that's dumb. Don't write that. And so by the time it hits print, there's some legitimacy to it. And look at the variety of things that they could still do if Kemba indeed is off the table. The combinations and the iterations are almost endless. Using not just the 225 players who are free agents, but also using a whole bunch of guys who aren't free agents. So if Kemba doesn't come to Dallas, you dust yourself off and you pick yourself up and you go to the next plan, the next handful of plans, the plan after that, ideas, some of which, of course, we can discuss tonight.
Yeah, and I mean, you're exclusive, here recently with Mark Cuban, Fish. I mean, he even said it himself. It's such a fluid situation right now. There's so many, not just free agents, but just like high quality free agents, in my opinion, on the market this year that they're like you said, it's endless possibilities. And even though I've been, a big pro Kemba guy, especially on the pod, we've talked about Kemba, it seems like every week, but that was my top guy for a while now. But even before then, I've said that the Mavs, they're in a great position this summer. And even if they don't get Kemba, I'm very, very confident that this team is going to be, significantly improved by the time we get to, I'm going to say, middle to the end of next week. So that's where I'm at on it. I still have a little bit of Kemba hope, until he, we as Mavs writers, reporters, fans, we know from experience that it's not done until the guy signs on the dotted line. So, until he actually agrees to a deal with Boston and follows through with that, I'm not going to completely move on there. But, from what we're seeing and hearing so far, we've known for a while that the Mavs really like Patrick Beverley. Fish, you had another exclusive a while back saying that Patrick Beverley was going to grant the Mavs a meeting. So, I mean, how do you feel on that? I mean, if the Mavs miss out on Kemba, is Patrick Beverley going to be the next guy they go to?
Well, I think the initial plan was Kemba Walker +1. If it ends up instead being 1 plus Patrick Beverley, that is to say the other player is better than Beverley, then that's more than satisfactory to me. Go back to what you said in my interview with Cuban, where, and this was Wednesday, and I don't think they've advanced the ball much yet in the 24 hours since we talked or whatever it's been. They didn't know where they were going to be headquartered. Like, Cuban wasn't sure he was going to be in Los Angeles like he usually is. Donnie's not sure that he's going to be in the home base of Dallas like he usually is. Because there's so much fluctuation and flexibility and versatility and unknown. So, hold on a second. I just got this text. When Adam Schefter does this on TV, I make fun of it because it looks so staged, but this is actually real.
We're going to get breaking news on the step back.
It is breaking news on this podcast. Let me say how to say this. The other teams in the Kemba Walker race are not aware that they're out of it.
Okay, there we go.
How about that? Okay,
there we go.
Let me take a minute and kick that around because I'm translating what I'm getting in a text.
Yeah.
In other words, Kemba Walker's agent Jeff Schwartz, has not told the Mavericks or Charlotte or anybody else, it's done, you're out. How about that? So
yeah,
is
okay.
Is that a tiny bit encouraging?
Yeah, because, I mean, earlier...
I feel a little bit better.
Yeah, I feel a little bit better about that, too, and that's awesome that you're able to get that right in the middle of the recording, so that's cool.
Yeah, that's good. Now, by the way, somebody who's close to the Kemba situation told me he does not want to go home to New York. I assume meaning the Knicks.
Right.
And I think we think we know what Brooklyn's doing with Kyrie and Moore. That seems pretty obvious, I guess, now.
Yes.
And so, and then L.A., as David Lord illustrated to the world, the Lakers, they found the way to their $30 million worth of room. So, they'll probably want to touch base with Kemba, I assume. But yeah, this is exclusive breaking news. Those other teams, Kemba Walker has not informed the other teams you're out of it. So still a glimpse of hope for the Hornets to a degree, and to the Lakers if they want in, and obviously to the Mavericks.
Well, see, and this is why. And look, I know, like we talked about, Woj. You feel like he wouldn't reach out there as far as he did if he didn't have a good feel on the situation, what he's being told.
Right.
But anytime Boston is in the news, it feels like Danny Ainge, to me, is notorious for leaking stuff and getting the Celtics in the news, and we've seen it before with the Celtics. It was manipulating things. Yes.
To the Celtics' benefit, media-wise, which is great. By the way, the Houston Rockets do a good job of that, I think.
Yeah.
All this crap hits the fan, and the Rockets end up always coming out of it smelling like a rose. So, yeah, there's a talent to that. And then on top of it, obviously, the Rockets have been a good team, and Boston was a good team too. I hope the Mavericks. I have no problem if the Mavericks want to be media manipulative. Go for it, as long as they're a good team. That's all I care about.
Yeah, same here. And okay, so again, guys, the Kemba Walker dream is not completely dead yet. Mavs, they haven't been told that Kemba is, canceling his meetings, and he's definitely signing with Boston. So,
none of the teams that are interested in Kemba Walker have been told, thanks but no thanks. That's how we're going to say it.
Okay. So now let's just for the sake of conversation, let's just say that Kemba does go to Boston, or he goes wherever that isn't Dallas. And let's, you mentioned the Patrick Beverley +1, and the +1 being a player better than Patrick Beverley. Who could you see, Fish, and Matt, I'll get your thoughts on this too. We'll just kind of go around in a circle here. But, Fish, who could you see the Mavs looking at? And it doesn't have to be, a free agent. It could be, through a trade. But who could you see
Absolutely.
the Mavs targeting to pair with a guy like Patrick Beverley as a plan B?
All right, let's throw out some of our best names. Let's understand that a lot of this has to do with how can I do a sign and trade here or move money there with Courtney Lee and or Tim Hardaway. Am I willing to give up Dwight Powell? Am I willing to give up Jalen Brunson? Jalen Brunson is a commodity. If there's a team that needs a starting point guard, and they can't pay him much, Jalen Brunson, the Mavericks surely are getting calls on, hey, by the way, don't throw Jalen Brunson into a trade if you don't need to because blah blah blah. So
right.
if you let your mind be open to it doesn't just have to be $30 million for the room. It can be more. If you move this, flip that, engineer this. I'm going to go back to the idea of Al Horford, for starters, not as the Mavericks or the 112 mystery promise team, because they were not. But now that he's available and out there, and he's floating around out there, if there's a mystery team that's already promised him $112 million for 4 years, and it's not Dallas, then I guess he's going there. But what if that number's wrong?
Right.
Mark Stein came in
like it is.
It really seems like it is. Mark Stein, who was with me side by side, initially saying the Mavericks are not the mystery team on Horford. And the Mavericks swore to me they weren't. And I believe him, I guess. But then a few days later, Stein said, I am hearing that there's a mystery $110 million team, which is only a little bit different than 112. Yeah. But what if you moved money around now that he's out there? He hasn't signed anything yet with a promise. What if you move money around and Al Horford is the guy you get along with Beverley?
Now, see,
a pipe dream, maybe a double pipe dream, but it's Thursday, Friday. It's a good day to dream.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, when I put that piece together about how it's possible for the Mavs, if they've got commitments, they could. There's ways you can maneuver it, and you could get Kemba at his max, and you could still give Horford his money, or very, very close to the the money that's been thrown around there. But I mean, if he's out of the equation, and you have a Mavs Patrick Beverley love fest going on, then I mean, Beverley and Horford, that's a more financially feasible pairing. It's a lot easier to do, in my opinion, and I mean that'd be great. Matt, what would you think about pairing Patrick Beverley with Al Horford potentially?
Well, I love that a lot. Back to the 4 years, $112 million. It just doesn't feel, every day that goes by, it feels less and less like that's the case, that he has that promise somewhere. So I feel like you could get him for less. But I love the idea of the two of them on the floor together, with the pieces the Mavs have already.
Okay, but let's again repeat. This is a incredible double pipe dream.
Right.
I think it's complicated to do. There's a lot of moving pieces. A lot of people have to say yes. You've got to sell some guys. I think it's complicated. But if you're asking me what my next big dream would be, it would be to go find $14 million more of room, or 12, or whatever it takes, and then it's blank plus Beverley, and the blank would be Horford. That'd be a lot of fun.
Right, but my thing is, if Kemba is indeed out of the equation in this scenario, then you can't, if you're the Mavericks, necessarily lock yourselves into being like, okay, now we definitely have to keep Powell, we definitely have to keep Brunson. Everything besides Luka and KP need to be on the table, ready to make moves, and that's the only way. That's the only way you're gonna improve the roster as much as you want to going forward.
Right, and
I'm sorry, but some observers, they're so focused on the stars, David Lord did a great thing, and he's done it a couple times now. He brings up Robert Covington in Minnesota.
Yeah.
I love this idea, by the way.
Okay, and I'll let you detail the idea, or maybe we can just say, hey, go read DallasBasketball.com, you son of a gun. Why aren't you already doing it?
Yeah, go read it.
but Robert Covington doesn't move the national needle. Well, what is he? Who is he? How tall is he? How many points? But those kind of players are tier 2 players, and Robert Covington is just an example of a guy that if you told me if I got Beverley and Covington, I'd go, okay, our team's way better, and our defense is, and we just fixed our defense. If this is the Mavs talking, and so I guess we can go through every idea, guys, all the way from Horford down to Covington and everything in between, and then down another level, and then we have to acknowledge one of the reasons that the Mavericks, we keep saying, I wonder if they have a mystery deal going, is because there's 200 other things that we haven't even thought of yet.
Yeah, and the thing I really like about the Covington idea, he's averaging about $12 million a year through the summer of 2022. So he's on a very team-friendly deal, for what he provides. So that would be a really quality pickup, in my opinion. I'm very open to that idea. Another situation that, and Fish, Matt, y'all can touch on this too, but with Houston thinking that they can get Jimmy Butler, that happens, they've got to get rid of some guys. And
yes,
we've heard that PJ Tucker, Eric Gordon, and Clint Capella are those guys. And we've touched on Clint Capella to the Mavs on previous podcasts, and we've written about it at DallasBasketball.com. But Fish, my question to you is, if the Mavs want to go for a cheaper center option, like say Ed Davis or just somebody, a reclamation project, Willie Cauley-Stein, something like that, would it make more sense to try and target one of those other guys with Houston, Eric Gordon or PJ Tucker?
Okay, those two names that you said, Willie Cauley-Stein and Ed Davis, two more good examples of, they're just kind of guys, but they'd be very helpful here,
right,
at the right price. The Clint Capella story comes from the Mavericks front office, who told me we would love the idea of Capella and Porzingis together in the front court.
Right.
I don't know how we do it, but we'd love it. So I think the Mavericks and the Rockets have talked a couple of times. The latest form of that is the Rockets deal, as I think you mentioned, where they want a first-round pick as in an exchange for sending away those kind of guys so they can afford Jimmy Butler. Well, three-way trades and sign-and trades, and here we go with complications again. But what if the Mavericks stick their nose into a three-way? Should Jimmy Butler really want to leave Philadelphia? And by the way, the Sixers think they're keeping him.
Yeah.
So, and the Rockets think they're getting him. So somebody's wrong. And this is why, again, since teams are wrong, obviously a Woj and a Stein and a Fish and we can all be wrong, since the teams themselves are sometimes wrong.
I think the Butler thing, is very similar to the Kemba situation in Charlotte. I think if Philadelphia offers that 5th year, I think he stays, on that 5-year max. But if they don't offer that 5th year, he could be gone.
Okay, so let's say he wants to go to Houston. Again, we're not saying we don't know that he does, but let's just say that. Well, Houston's got to move mountains, so they've got to. I think they have to get rid of all 3 of those guys, don't they?
At least 2 of them, I know. It might be all 3 though.
I think it's all 3.
All right, so Dallas sticks its nose in there and says, "Well, we don't have a first-round pick to give you to get involved in this, but we have a first-round player in Jalen Brunson. Where'd Jalen Brunson play in college?
Philadelphia.
How many blocks away is that from where the Sixers play?
I think they played in the same building, didn't they?
Neighbors.
How much of a hero is Jalen Brunson in Philadelphia?
He's a big deal.
What position do they need Do they need a starting point guard there?
Well, it depends on how you label Ben Simmons, but
no, they do. They do. They're better when they have a point guard and Ben Simmons on the floor together.
Yeah.
Did we just make a trade?
It's possible. As long as Brunson doesn't end up in Houston, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, the Cowboys, the Mavericks love Brunson, and I've talked about this kind of idea in general with Mavericks officials. They're like, no, we love Brunson. I'm like, okay, but you love Brunson more than you love Clint Capella? Because that's what you'd be getting here. So the point is, don't take Capella off the list just because the Rockets insist they want a first-round pick and the Mavericks don't have that. That's the point of a three-way.
Right. I think some of just kind of surveying, what Mavs fans talk about and how they view Capella, and there's a lot of people that think that it doesn't make sense to potentially trade for Clint Capella and still turn around and sign Dwight Powell to a long-term extension. I mean, in my opinion, I feel like if there was a way to still give Powell his extension and sign and trade him to another team, I don't know if Philadelphia would even be interested there or not, but something like that, I would be more open to that than I would be letting go of Jalen Brunson. That's just me, because I'm really high on Brunson. I think it was, incredible what he showed as a second-round pick in his first year, especially towards the end of that year. And like you said, Fish, the Mavs themselves are really high on him too. So if they're saying...
Okay, but wait a minute. But in this vacuum, you would rather have Brunson or Capella?
It's
Capella.
I'm gonna say Capella, but you're
Really?
putting me in between a rock and a hard place here, because
Okay.
I'm envisioning what Brunson could become.
And I shouldn't laugh at you because obviously your high opinion of Brunson, and I have it too. The Mavericks very much have it. I will say this about when you mentioned Mavericks fans, they don't like this, they argue that, they don't like this player, and for 20 years on DallasBasketball.com and for 30 years here in DFW, I don't know that anybody's interacted and had more barroom brawls about the Mavericks media-wise than I have. But the way that my barroom brawls end is, you guys had Tony Ronzoni on as a guest last week, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Very great guest.
He's a terrific guy, and he knows more about basketball and scouting than all 20,000 of us at the AAC on opening night put together. No, seriously. And so, with all due respect to Dalton and Fish and Matt and David Lord and everybody else's talent evaluation, and every fan, and Dallas Basketball, DB.com boards, it is the most brilliant Mavs and NBA fans in the world. It's incredible the high basketball IQ that exists there. But I won't let them win an argument with Tony Ronzoni on talent judgment, or with Donnie Nelson, or with Rick Carlisle. So
I agree with that.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
People used to, on Twitter, I did this about football with Will McClay and Stephen Jones, and then the whole fantasy football community, like all the big shots nationally, including Evan Silva. You know him?
I remember this.
They just, I mean, it was an army of them. It's kind of like the army that I usually have on Twitter that goes after other people, only we have fans that do that. These were actual guys with 10,000 followers and stuff, and they were just crushing me because what was it called? What's it called, Matt? It's a deference to authority or something like that. It's some psychological arguing debate class thing.
Cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance, is that what you were talking about?
No, not that. This is something about just because the guy's a coach doesn't mean he's smarter than the fan. And it's a thing.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I can't remember what it's called. And I'm like, and they kept using this phrase against me. I'm like, that's a great phrase, and I guess I get it and stuff, but the coach is smarter than the fan. What are you guys talking about?
That's why he's a coach.
but they were going, and Evan Silver and now have now become friends, and we're all, everything's fine. We kissed and made up, and it was just great. And he might be the best fantasy football guy in the country, Evan Silva. And maybe a team should hire him. And I'm not being sarcastic, but he's smarter about the Cowboys roster than Will McClay. Evan's my guy, but that's a tough one for me to swallow. I can only think of one candidate. There's only one candidate in the whole world, media world, that I think okay, he can win this argument. An NBA team needs to hire David Lord.
I would agree with that.
Yes, it's ridiculous. And I've been afraid. He's worked with me for 20 years, and every year I'm like, well, this is probably going to be the year that somebody's going to hire my way. And remember when the Memphis Grizzlies hired John? What's his name? John Hollinger?
Yeah.
Okay, John Hollinger, who made up some kooky formula and was never right about anything, but he had a cool formula. Got a front office job with a team. And he's just a sports writer. And I'm telling you, David Lord could think circles around John Hollinger. And how somebody hasn't stolen him away from us. David Lord has every answer. I don't know how he does it. He's on Larry Kuhn's board to put together the frequently asked questions on the CBA. That one I'll give you. That I think David Lord actually might be able to be an assistant general manager better than some assistant general managers in the NBA. But otherwise, there is a difference between Rick Carlisle and Mike Fisher. Come on.
Well, I'll say this. Apparently, I mean, this isn't a shock to anybody, I'm sure, but, David Lord, he definitely knows the CBA rules and how all that works a lot better than Rob Pelinka did initially.
Or seemed to anyway.
Or seemed to, yeah.
Now, in the end, they got on the same page because the Lakers have made it work. But David Lord, I'm not saying the Lakers read David Lord and said, oh, that's what we should do.
Well, I was about to say that's probably exactly what they did.
But I'll tell you what, don't think that hasn't happened. Don't think that an NBA team hasn't looked at David Lord's work and said, oh yeah, we could do that, because that has absolutely happened. And some of the things that have resulted from it have fancy nicknames and T-shirts.
Let's circle back to the Brunson thing, because I mean, yeah, I would take Clint Capella, especially if it meant he could be the +1 to signing a Patrick Beverley. Yeah, because I mean, because that's going to take away minutes that Brunson would have, and we assume Luka, he's going to be handling the ball a lot, and you assume, I think we all assume that J.J. Barea is coming back, or do we think that? That's what's been reported.
J.J. Barea's good health and his membership in the family, and his quality of play, of course, and then I would add his relationship with Luka and Porzingis.
Right.
I can't remember which guy it was. It might have been Porzingis. Porzingis comes to town, and the first guy that takes him out to dinner, as I understand the story, the first guy to say, hey, Pete, what are you doing tonight? Oh, I do not know, nothing. J.J. Barea takes him out to dinner. So,
nice.
And, of course, speaks Spanish like the two kids do. And so I think Barea, as a continuing part of the Dirk Nowitzki culture, and a fabric of the locker room, I like the idea of J.J. Barea.
Yeah, and the last thing I heard about J.J. Barea was from Tim McMahon. He said that Barea's doing great in his recovery, and he should be back in time to play for his national team. So, I mean, that would be another, extraordinary Achilles tear recovery for a Mav. The first one was Wes Matthews, and originally I was saying, that if the Mavs wanted to make a last-ditch effort pitch to Kevin Durant, that should be one of their big talking points. But if Barea comes back healthy, and then you've got Luka handling the ball, and you say you can sign a guy like Patrick Beverley, then I could see where, it wouldn't hurt as much to let Brunson go, especially if you're getting the duo of Beverley and a Clint Capella. So
I can have Devin Harris still laying around here too if I want to.
Right. It seems like Devin Harris is one of those guys that he might not ever retire. He might just keep coming back on these 1-year deals.
That's right.
But Matt, I mean, let's move on to some other names that I'm just kind of spitballing here, assuming again that Kemba is off the table, which we know is not the case yet. I mean, it could be, but we know it's not the case just yet. But another guy that I've been thinking about, and Fish, I don't know if you have, this might be something we need to check on with the the Mavs front office, but Bojan Bogdanovic from Indiana is a guy I've been very, very high on. I wrote about the Plan B article that paired Beverley with Bogdanovic, if we're just talking about signing 2 free agents. And I think it's a guy that you could get for around $18 to $20 million a year. And when you compare his stats side by side with Chris Middleton, who we know the Mavs also liked. I mean, Bogdanovic, he's not the defender that Chris Middleton is, but when you look at his stats, he's a better offensive player. So, I mean, I would assume that the Mavs really like him, but, I mean, what do you guys think about the idea of the Mavs going after Bogdanovic pretty hard if they swing and miss on Kemba?
Well, for me, this is the one guy where I'm shocked I haven't heard we haven't heard more
right
in regards to his name. I mean, he seems like a perfect fit in more ways than one. They need what he brings to the table. I mean, he's going to be a free agent. He's going to be affordable. So it doesn't make sense that we haven't heard much about it. I mean, maybe that's for a reason, or maybe it's not. But a team that I've heard with him a lot is San Antonio, which makes me shudder.
I would be so upset if that happened.
I think he'd be a great to pair with Beverley and KP and Luka and whoever they end up playing, in the front court.
Which you guys have written about, by the way. You guys have written about Bojan and Beverley, one of the Plan Bs.
Yeah, Dalton wrote a great piece about that.
Yeah, but you're right. Maybe that's one of these under the radars that the Mavericks would prefer to keep under the radar.
Right, and if you do something like that, if you don't make a move for a center, whether it's free agency or whether it's some kind of trade, you have to figure KP is going to be playing a lot at the 5. And, you'd have Dwight Powell at the 4, or maybe you could do something with Kleba. But, I think one guy that's being overlooked for the Mavs here, and, he's a candidate to come back on a vet minimum contract, and he can actually be really productive when given the minutes, is Salah Mejri, who is...
Yeah, really? You think so?
Who is, we know he's
You are
really,
such a homer.
We know he's
what are we talking about here, Dalton?
I'm talking about if the Mavs go out and they sign, 2 big guys, and it's not like, tier 1 guys, but say if they go out and get 2 tier 2 guys in free agency, and they're just looking for a cheap center, to give a vet minimum contract to, who's to say that they're not, we've talked about loyalty and family and everything. I mean, I could see them throwing one at Mejri to bring him back on a 1-year deal.
Oh, I can, because he's Luka's big brother.
Right.
Yes. And it's true. I mean, he's an NBA center. But I thought you started this paragraph talking about how good he was.
Well, I'm just saying in spurts. I'm not saying put Salah out there as your starting center. I'm just saying
that's what it sounded like you were saying.
No. Let me go ahead and clarify that. I don't need to be catching any heat for that. I'm just saying
this is the only podcast in the world that spends 5 minutes on Salah Mejri. That's all I'm saying.
Right. You know what? We're just gonna end that there. I'm not gonna go any further on that. Y'all are right. I went too far.
All right, guys, before we go any farther, we're going to take a quick break and pay some bills, and then we'll come back on the other side and get into some more ideas that we have for what the Mavs could be getting into this summer. All right, guys, we're back. Okay, so my question for both of y'all is let's throw Houston out of the equation for a minute, because when we talk about trades, that seems like the only name that pops up in trades at the moment. That and the Covington thing. But who's a guy that you guys think that could be had in a trade that we're maybe not thinking of? Like the one that popped to my mind that keeps popping into my mind is Blake Griffin. That's probably a pipe dream also, so we won't get too far into it. But is there names that y'all think of with trades that maybe we're not thinking of out loud?
All right, let me go first. The reason that Detroit is interesting is because it took a long time for the Mavericks to finally announce that Isaiah Roby trade.
Right.
Why?
I heard you talking about this on the radio, so I wanted to get more in depth about it.
Why did it take a week to finalize such a meaningless, innocuous trade? Unless it's not meaningless and innocuous, or wasn't going to be.
I don't know why it took so long to do it, but I do remember Donnie saying at that press conference that it was going to take. He didn't say how long it was going to take, but he did say it was going to be a little bit before, the trade finalized. So they weren't able to say.
But why?
I know. I don't know. I don't exactly know why, but.
All right. Well, one of the reasons, speaking generally, of why this would be is because it's only the first part of a bigger trade.
Right. I mean, you have to fit, and I mean, a guy we've talked about with Detroit in the past is Andre Drummond. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, I mean, if the Mavs are interested in Clint Capella, then obviously they'd be interested in Andre Drummond. So
if you're doing, and all we're doing is reading tea leaves here. I don't have anybody in the Mavs organization telling me, we sat on that for a while because we got something big brewing.
Yeah.
But it sure is weird to sit on this meaningless, relatively speaking, minuscule deal. And by the way, then again, this is David Lord talking. He says, Fish, you asked about it on Wednesday afternoon, and suddenly on Wednesday evening there's a press release. I said, David, you're probably giving me a little too much credit, but it certainly counts as weird. I'll just say this: just because they did finalize and announce it, doesn't mean they can't still turn around and go, okay, Detroit, we're ready for the second chapter of this. So,
right.
I'm not necessarily pinpointing a guy, but I'm pinpointing that idea. Derek Favors, is he free now?
I don't know. I can check. Well, keep going. I'm checking.
Okay. They've always liked Derek Favors here. They just like him. And, I don't know if he's probably never made an All-Star game, has he?
No, but he's one of those dirty work guys. He's very serviceable. I can see why they like him.
Yeah, and I think he opted out. Did he opt out of a $17 million thing?
That's what I'm wondering. I should know this.
He's entering the free agent period, listening to other teams, and he's unrestricted. And
to me that's a compelling. Now at some point that becomes too pricey. But that's an under the radar guy that they like.
Yeah,
then of course, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think I definitely would if I had to choose, I'd choose Derek Favors over Salah Mejri. So
I think I would too. And then again, this is a guy who's free, but restricted. So freedom isn't really free. As Happy 4th of July. But Malcom Brogdon. What is his price breaking point?
Right. In my opinion, and it's just from reading some stuff coming out of Milwaukee and just kind of my own version of reading the tea leaves, so to speak. I think if you gave Brogdon an offer somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 years, and let's just say $80 million, so $20 million per, I think that's probably enough to pry him away from Milwaukee.
Okay, but let's understand what I guess there's two breaking points. One, and let's use the Mavericks as an example. There's their breaking point. How much is too much, right?
Right.
But then by the time we get to Sunday at 5:01 or shortly after, won't the Mavericks and the Bulls and whoever else, won't they have a really good idea where the Bucks are financially with what they're doing and what the Bucks' breaking point is?
Yes, they should, because you figure that one of the first announcements that's going to come at shortly after 5:01 is going to be the Chris Middleton max contract.
Correct. Yep, which again we wrote here 10 days ago. Mavericks found out he's staying there. So there's that one. They've got to deal with Lopez. They have to deal with
Mirotic,
and then Brogdon. So is there an odd man out? Is there? I guess my working theory is that when they put all those guys together, and they've moved mountains to get them all, and then they're sitting there and saying, okay, that leaves us, I'm just going to pick a number, that leaves us $19 million for Brogdon.
Right.
Well, then somebody's going to offer him 20.
Yeah, I feel like he's going to be a big enough commodity where somebody's going to pry him away. And if they don't, then one of those three guys you mentioned is going to be on the market. And honestly, if I'm the Mavericks, I would pursue any of the three.
Well, and the reason I think that Brogdon is more, gettable than what some people might think, to me, I started to really think that when it was, the season was still going on, and the Bucks gave Eric Bledsoe that 4-year, $70 million extension. And, once that happened, I was like, you know what, they might be having some second thoughts. Brogdon is a great player. He's very efficient. He's gotten better every single year since his rookie year. But, he also has some pretty significant injury concerns, too.
Yes.
So, I don't know. It just depends on who the highest bidder is. But in Milwaukee's, in their view, you could probably get him for around $18 to $20 million a year, just from what I've read, and just kind of trying to read the tea leaves there. But I guess if I had to make a list right now, as we're just a couple days away from this, I would go Kemba 1. I would go Patrick Beverley +1 as my plan B, whether that's Bogdanovic, Capella, Horford, somebody like that. And then my plan C after that would, be to make an offer on Brogdon.
Yeah.
Malcom Brogdon, because I think if you go through those plans and it's one after the other, you check off the list, the earlier you make an offer to Brogdon, I think your chances are better of stealing him away from Milwaukee.
And Fish, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you do pursue Brogdon and you get him to sign a deal, you still have the ability to make trades, correct?
You can still make trades because that money, that bid money's frozen, but that doesn't freeze you from doing other things.
Right. So just because they signed Brogdon doesn't mean it has to be the end of the summer. So things could still get better from there.
Right. The thing it does do is it puts you on hold to try to sign another similarly sized free agent, obviously.
Yeah.
So you'd go into that process the same way Dallas did with Chandler Parsons, which, by the way, we all forget it now when we say, oh, they never sign anybody. It's not true they never sign anybody. That myth really bothers me. It's just that nothing's worked out in a gigantic way. They signed Chandler Parsons, an extremely clever steal away from Houston. It was fantastic. You guys remember it?
Yeah. They made it.
I was up, Matt. I don't know if Matt, if you were with me yet at that time. We were up for 48 straight hours.
I wrote about this. I remember.
And I mean, we were on the phone. We constantly. It was fantastic. And then they very strategically stole an important piece from their arch rivals. That counts. And then it didn't work. Signing Dirk Nowitzki counts as signing a free agent. And if you don't think so, imagine if he would have, in 2000 and whatever it was, decided, you know what, I'm going to go play with Stevie in Phoenix.
Right.
Which Stevie asked him to do 1 year. They went to dinner in New York and talked about it.
You know,
Kobe asked him too.
Monte Ellis before that, you know, kind of soured. That was a pretty big signing for them. You know, he was.
Now, was it tier 2? Of course, it was tier 2. Was it a little bit of a fallen angel? Yeah, but that doesn't mean it doesn't count. Harrison Barnes counts. Wesley Matthews counts. DeAndre Jordan counts. So this idea that Dallas never signs anybody or never gets anybody, I'll give you somebody else that counts. Now that I'm on a rampage, how do you think Kristaps Porzingis landed here? You don't think he wanted to come here?
Yeah, I think
he was forced to come here?
You know, and
I would say so.
Yeah, and before we elaborate on that a little bit, you mentioned that about Kristaps coming here. That's another thing that I kind of, when I see that Woj, Kemba, Boston, you know, saying it's kind of over, or at least insinuating that it's already over. I remember it was January 31st, and Woj tweeted out that I think he said the Spurs, the Raptors, and the Nets, and there was some other team he listed as, you know, the major suitors for Kristaps Porzingis. Didn't mention Dallas at all. And then within the next 30 to 40 minutes, Kristaps Porzingis was a Maverick.
Which international scout who happens to be a friend of this podcast has known Kristaps Porzingis since he was 14 years old?
Yes. Yeah. Hey,
that person works for the Mavericks. It wasn't an accident that Porzingis landed here.
Right.
If he wasn't going to sign here, his $158 million extension. By the way, I still can't get over that. Is it Shams? Is that how you say his first name?
Shams.
That he was writing that Porzingis is going to go to Dallas and only sign the qualifying offer.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
In fact, that's another good example of how the very best can be wrong. Because he's outstanding at his job. But that was wrong from the second he typed it. It never made any sense, and it was never right. That it would be unprecedented to do that, almost, except Nerlens Noel, and moronic to do it.
Right.
And the Mavericks knew when he came here, and he knew when he came here, that this was going to be a long-term deal. Had the Mavericks not gotten that indication from the Porzingis camp, they wouldn't have traded for him.
Yes.
And I'll bet you a beer at the Maverick bar that Tony Ronzoni helped get them the promise that this is going to work out. I'll give you another one. Nobody's ever written this. I just keep whispering it. Do you guys think that Luka Doncic somehow slipped beyond the first pick, beyond the second pick, all the way down to Dallas by accident?
No.
Or do you think Luka wanted to come here?
I think he wanted to come here, and Ronzoni, I think he had a big say in that. And then, like we've discussed before, Billy Duffy, you know, and the Mavs, you know, essentially making up for stuff that happened in the past with Steve Nash and all that. All of that, it was like a perfect storm. And I
think it was I think it was a perfectly orchestrated storm.
Right.
I think that Donnie Nelson, who has known, and I assume Tony has too, but I know Donnie has, that Donnie Nelson's been friends with the Doncic family since he was 14 years old.
Yes,
and when it started coming, when Donnie started having the vision saying, you know what, in that year's draft, we're going to be there, I think that's when Donnie called Bill Duffy and said, can we be friends again? And the next thing you know, I don't know this, but I think when the Arizona and Sacramento and Atlanta, that when they talked to Bill Duffy, I wonder if Bill Duffy didn't say, well, obviously, you know, Luke would love to come there. It's a lovely city, but he'd really like to go to Dallas. I think I'm willing to bet a beer that that's what happened.
Yeah.
And because so Arizona, which was coached by Luka's coach overseas, passed on him.
Yes.
Sacramento, which is run by Euros, passed on a Euro.
It was really crazy. And I mean, yeah,
Atlanta pretended that Trae Young's better than Luka Doncic. No, it was a perfect storm, all right. It was a perfectly orchestrated storm, orchestrated by Donnie and Tony and company. And therefore, when the critic says nobody ever wants to come to Dallas, I like to remind them the last three greatest players who've played here, all of whom were on last year's roster, Dirk, Porzingis, and Luka, all wanted to come here. Why don't we count them?
Right. We definitely should. And just to, we've got one more point we're going to cover here with Fish and Matt, but before we even get there, I just want to say this one thing. I've seen some people saying that, the Mavs are kind of bidding against themselves, when it comes to Kristaps. But my rebuttal to that is the Mavs wouldn't commit 5 years, $158 million to a guy who isn't what they expect him to be. That he's been in the weight room. He's gotten rave reviews from everybody, around the team. Dirk himself, said he was, or at least, he said how hard of a worker Porzingis is. And, I mean, we've kind of tracked his progress throughout the summer. He looks ready to go. I mean, I think some of that, they bid against themselves. This isn't a Nerlens Noel situation. This is a guy.
And if I may, I guess if a critic wants to say, given his injury situation, don't you wish you could build in some sort of protections against that? And I get that. But outside of that, if the reports on Kemba Walker and his dealings with Charlotte are true, Charlotte came in with an offer, and you guys may have broken down just how crummy the offer might have been. And then he declined it, I guess. And then they said, well, let us prepare another offer. Have you guys heard that story?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Charlotte, this isn't a garage sale. You're not bartering over somebody's old lawn furniture. If you want to play in this on this plane, this is max. This is the max money game.
Yeah, you don't play around with it.
Kemba Walker, he doesn't have to get his supermax, but Kemba Walker's got to get his max. Or of course what are you talking about? Kristaps Porzingis, this is a max player, so you offer him the max. That's the game. If you don't want to play with the big boys, then you know what? Then I guess you'll be the Charlotte Hornets forever.
Yeah, and I mean, Kemba being a 29-year-old All-NBA, All-Star, coming off a year where he made $12 million, that's almost criminal. So he's definitely going to go out there and get his max. And the Mavs know what they have in Kristaps Porzingis, and I think he's been off the court for so long now that people are kind of skeptical of it, but they know what they have, and I know he's eager to get back out there and show people what he's got again in October. But okay, guys, last thing, Fish, I know how you are with this. You've said it before in the past about the 1% rule when it comes to these big fish, and I mean really any decent free agency signings. But we'll start with you, Matt, and then I'll go to Fish. But Matt, what just right now? We get to Sunday, 5:01. What are the Mavs doing? Come on, Matt. Come on, Matt. I won't hold you to it.
I think they're going to talk to Kemba Walker, and I think that they're going to get the sign that he's, or they're going to hear that he's signing with Boston, which I hate to admit. And then they're going to go out and they're going to sign Patrick Beverley. And then they're going to wait to see who falls off of the Milwaukee train. And they're going to sign that guy. And then I think they're going to, after they have those guys signed, they're going to, go out there and make another trade and get a third piece. And then take care of KP.
Right.
That's right on the money for me. I'm not going to argue with Woj on Kemba Walker. That'd be a fool's errand to bet money that he's wrong. That doesn't make any sense. I think they'll make the the formal offer to Kristaps Porzingis first, just because it's a formality. We love you best, and you're ours. We love you best. They'll have actually, I guess, finalize it later. But then, then I think it's 1 plus Beverley, and if it's somebody that falls off the Milwaukee train, that works for me. If it's something that you get in a three-way where you end up with a Capella, that works for me. And then I'm going to throw Derek Favors' name in there again, just because it's so under the radar, but it smells just right in terms of what the Mavericks like. So I think Matt and I are really on the same page. And by the way, and we're still optimistic, because that's still a lot. That's a lot higher than 1%. We just gave something. And it's a lot of moving parts, and the results would be terrific, and the Mavericks would look like a playoff team to me.
Yeah, your team gets a whole lot better having a summer like that. And look, like I said, I'm not going to completely shut the door on Kemba Walker to Dallas. They may have a meeting with him, and he might fall in love with what they have to say, and we just don't know, what exactly could happen there. But I'm going to take what y'all said, and I guess this is going to be my hot take or bold prediction. I think that they're going to try to pair Patrick Beverley with Horford, and I don't think it's going to be the $112 million. So that's just me talking. So take it with a grain of salt. Take it for what it's worth. But that's going to be my bold prediction as we approach free agency here. So, all right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode. We've got an exciting weekend coming up, and the first few days of next week is going to be really exciting too. But Fish, as always, we appreciate you coming on, and we got to do it again sometime.
Cholo.
So we'll see you next time, Fish. Have a good one.
Thanks, boys.
All right.
Thanks, Fish.
All right, there goes Mike Fisher. Had some great stuff to say tonight. We got our own DB exclusive, our first live one on the pod. So, so that's something. It gives us a little bit of hope with the Kemba Walker situation. The door's not completely shut. Kemba's representation hasn't told teams that they're out of the running yet. So, Matt, any last thoughts before we take off here?
I wish I had your optimism. These last 12 to 15 hours have really beat me down. But, we pick ourselves up and we keep going, and, we'll see what happens. But I'm still very optimistic about the summer. So I think everyone else should be too. There's a lot of exciting things that can happen as we just finished talking about. So just keep a lookout for our stuff on DallasBasketball.com. We'll break news, I'm sure, every day up until July 6th. There will be something else on there that you need to check out and you need to read. And if you'd like to help support the podcast, go check out our Patreon at patreon.com/stepbackmavs. And I think that's about it. What about you, Dalton?
Well, before we completely take off here, Matt, tell the people about, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen it on Twitter already, but tell the people about what's going on this weekend, kind of like a pre-free agency party.
Yes, I almost forgot. At Reddit Mavericks is a big Mavs Twitter presence, and he and Skin Wade and a few other people got together and are hosting a Mavs meetup at the Petticolas Brewery in Dallas. And it's a great little brewery, great beer, really cool place to hang out. I'm going to be there. Fish is going to be there. Skin's going to be there. I think Ben Rogers is going to be there. And anybody you can think of that's on Mavs Twitter that is not, or that is in the city of Dallas is probably going to show up there. So if you want to meet anybody, me, which I don't know why anybody want to meet me, but, if you want to meet Fish or Skin or any of the guys like that, then, you definitely need to show up. It's at, I believe it starts at 2 o'clock on Sunday and will ride through the beginning of free agency. So if something breaks,
there's going to be a party.
There's going to be a party, and you will be the first to know about it because Fish and Skin will have their cell phones in their hands.
Yeah.
So I highly encourage everybody to show up.
Yeah, everybody should definitely go if you can go. It breaks my heart that I'm not going to be able to be there, Matt, but I will be with you guys in spirit, and I will be chilling on my couch just waiting for something to happen. So so if I wasn't, 7 hours away in South Mississippi, I would definitely hit that up. But
yeah, and if I've blocked you or muted you and you tell me that at Petty Colas, I'll buy you a beer, I promise.
That sounds like a plan. All right, guys. Well, that does it for another episode of the Step Back and Mavs podcast. As always, we appreciate every one of you for coming and listening every week. This thing continues to grow. We're very happy that, it's taken off the way it has, and we're going to continue to bring you guys the best Dallas Mavericks content, whether it's written at dallasbasketball.com or, on the podcast here at the Step Back. So thank you guys. Have a great weekend, and go Mavs.
The master best on the floor. I'm wild, but yeah, I'm the GOAT. This game get cold. Yeah, you might need a coach. Your friends turn into your foe. But I'ma just roll. Gotta keep rolling your boat. Yeah, I swear I give them hope. I say I'm cleaner than the soap. This time of year proves who will really sink or float for real. Yeah, it's the Mavericks, all about action. Don't do no acting, no Samuel Jackson. Dirk at the ball, you know that it's magic. Post move deadly, yeah, get tragic. Yeah, it's the Mavericks, all about action. Don't do no acting, no Samuel Jackson. Dirk at the ball, you know that it's magic. Post move deadly, yeah, get tragic. In this game, it's a lot of grit. You know what I'm saying? Proves who has integrity. Late nights, early mornings, but we all want the trophy at the end of the day. And that's the beauty of this game, because at the end of the day, only the real gonna float, man, for real. You either sink or you float. Only the real gonna float.